Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about the topic of spirituality and my spiritual journey. This is something that I've kind of wanted to share for a long time on my channel, but honestly it's kind of a scary thing to share just because it's so vulnerable and honestly, a lot of times I think people won't really believe me when I tell these things in my spiritual journey and some of the experiences I've had. But I feel like that's what I want to share about today. And hopefully some of you might get something out of this. If not, just listening to my story might be interesting. Also, I just want to say that I'm in no way trying to impose my beliefs on anyone, my belief system. I really am making this video with the intention of just connecting with people, with the commonality of every person being able to experience God in their own way, and to maybe grow deeper in your spirituality, connect better to your intuition, and with the common thread of just knowing that you are completely and totally loved. I think that's the biggest message I want to get across to everyone, is just that you are so loved and accepted. And life is crazy right now, and I think maybe this would help bring some people some peace, or talking about different topics around spirituality and growing in your connection with God. So I just wanted to say all of that. Hello, welcome. I thought I would just share kind of my journey with spirituality and my experience. So basically my whole life I have felt very, very, very connected to God. From a very, very young age, I always was aware of a presence or a higher being, if you will. I had lots of encounters when I was little, all the way until now. As a 30-year-old, I have had many profound spiritual experiences, a lot of really kind of out there mystical stuff that honestly I never really share with people other than like my husband and a few friends, and like my mom and my mother-in-law know this, but everybody else I don't really share this stuff with because it sounds kind of out there. And I think a lot of people, if they're not really connected spiritually, could potentially think you're crazy or you're just making it up, or especially on the internet. So I had so much like resistance and hesitancy just because I didn't want people to judge me, which is honestly kind of silly. And I really don't want that to be a deciding factor in my life, whether or not I share things in fear of what people will think. So yeah, always really connected with God. I wouldn't say I was raised in a strictly religious home at all. My mom is a Christian, and my dad, I would say, is a Christian, but also kind of not. It's kind of hard to explain. He kind of is open to a lot of beliefs, like he believes in aliens, and I don't really know how to describe it. So my mom, growing up, I was always taught about Jesus. I was always taught about God, but in a really like personal way. And we would go to church. I went to church growing up, but it was never forced, which I think is really good. Like my parents never forced me to go to church. It was like always my own decision. My parents didn't really believe in baptizing me when I was younger because they believed it should be my choice whether or not I got baptized, which I did later in life when I was a teenager, and it was really like my own decision. So I was really, really blessed to have parents who were somewhat religious but never forced it upon me. And I think that's really, really important, in my opinion, for kids and for people growing up, that they are able to have their own spiritual deep connections with God that are their own. Because you hear so many stories of people that their parents forced them to go to church, or they were brought up in a really, really strict religious home, and they end up just hating and resenting God and the church, which I totally get, like completely. So I think that can be kind of a toxic thing. So I was really lucky to grow up with having just my own experiences. And even for a while, like there was lots of parts of my life where I never went to church, but I was having very profound experiences with God outside of church, and they were very real and significant. And so it sort of like solidified my own relationship with God and my own journey, and made it honestly more real because it wasn't inside any type of like institution, if that makes sense. So yeah, I, from a really early age, was always pondering God, was always pondering creation, trying to understand the universe, was always honestly asking really deep questions as like a 3-year-old of like, why were we created? How were we created? You know, why did God do this? Why did God do that? What about death? Like, where do we go after death? Like, I've from the beginning of time been pondering these questions, which might be normal for like, you know, a 4 and 5-year-old, but it was something that I felt like I pondered a lot, like maybe more than normal. And so I've always really been interested in spirituality and the metaphysical and understanding the universe and why we're here and why we're created. Like, I mean, to me, it's like, what's the point of life? You know, really, what is the point of life? So I thought about this a lot. And I remember even my mom told me when I was little that I one time looked at her and I said, Mom, why did God create us? And she was like, you know, honey, I'm not really sure. And I smiled with her with like big gleaming eyes. And I was like, I know why he created us. And she's like, why? And I'm like, because he was lonely, because he wanted to be in relationship with others, and he's creative, he wanted to create. And I just like told that to my mom, which I feel like is kind of a profound thing for a little kid to say. And this kind of carried on throughout, you know, my elementary school, junior high. I always felt connected to God. I would pray before bed every night. I would talk to God every night before bed. I would, you know, I would literally talk to God and ask questions. Like I would sit up at night. If any of you know me in real life, I'm a horrible night owl, and I've been a horrible night owl since I was little, because I would stay up and think. I would think about all of these questions, and I would pray, and I honestly was concerned with so many things in our world that I think in hindsight was just too much for a little kid to be worrying about and thinking about. But in those conversations at night, staying up late as a young person, I would just stay up and talk to God, and I feel like he would talk back. And I felt like in that, I really got to know this being of God, this being of love, if you will. And it felt like this deep, profound connection where I became more and more aware of God throughout my day. And I also just started to become really sensitive to the energy around me, to people. I felt like I could sense who people are really well. I could feel their energy. I could know if they were depressed or hurting. Like I was really empathetic and very sensitive from a young age. But I think that amplified too in my relationship with God. I almost felt like I became more sensitive. So that was a really beautiful thing that developed for me for a young age, and that carried into like junior high. And I started having a bit of insomnia in junior high and high school. It was really bad. I'd had really severe anxiety and stress all of a sudden at night. And so my way to cope with it was to talk to God and to pray, because that was the only thing that gave me peace. And a lot of times I would turn on peaceful music, I would turn on worship music, and I could only go to sleep if I did those things. And so again, my relationship started to deepen even further, because I was staying up at night trying to sleep and having panic attacks, anxiety, and all these things. And the only thing that would calm me down would be to spend time with God. And also, like during that time, I started to become a lot more sensitive to even like spirits. Like I could feel things in my room, I could sense things in my room. A lot of times it was bad stuff, but then eventually it started to be good, you know, feeling good energy, good spirits in the room, but I could feel stuff, and I was very aware of the presence of things, even from a young age. And I really just kept it to myself because, again, I didn't think that people would really understand. So I started to go to church a little bit, and my relationship with God deepened even further. But it was still, I think the church is amazing in a lot of ways, and it helps so many people in a lot of ways, but it also can put a lot of things in a box. And at this point, my questions about who God is and how I was experiencing him felt really outside of that box. So I would go, and I still had a lot of amazing experiences through church, really profound experiences. I think I was lucky in that my mom was drawn to more like spiritual churches, I guess you would call it, more charismatic churches. So it wasn't like these strict, more cold. It was very, very free, like a free environment, which I think was helpful for me because I don't think I would have connected with church as much if it wasn't an environment like that. So we went to some pretty like out there churches, and I had, again, really profound experiences. In high school is when I started to really tap into getting words for people. And in like the church, I guess in the Christian community, you would call that like the prophetic. But in layman's terms, everybody else would probably call that like psychic, right? Really just, I started to hear and see pictures over people, and I would be getting just kind of like these downloads and words. And it would be when my heart felt for them. Like it always came the clearest when my heart would be in tune with God's heart for a person, and I would feel that they were in pain, or I would feel something. And then through that heart posture in that place, I started to get words. Now I felt and experienced things like this even younger, but I didn't know what it was called. And I actually thought that everyone could hear words like that and see pictures. I didn't think that it was particularly special. I just thought, oh, isn't everybody just kind of reading each other? Like, isn't this just like normal? And I think a lot of people do if they're sensitive. But that gift started to amplify in high school. And, my mom kind of sat down with me one day and she's like, look, like I have this gifting as well. I think you have a gifting to be able to give prophetic insight for people and to encourage them. And so she kind of encouraged me in it. And then the more spiritual church I was going to also encouraged me in that gifting. So I started to develop it pretty strongly, and I started to give words regularly to people, honestly, like hundreds at this point. And it would really touch people, which would really touch me, because that's really the whole point, is to encourage people. I believe, prophetic words, psychic words, whatever have you, is about encouraging the person. It's about helping them. And I believe the posture of your heart needs to be pure and loving, and from that place it can profoundly affect them. So yeah, I kind of was growing in my spirituality even more in high school. And then it was also a very lonely time because I just felt kind of odd. I don't, like, none of my friends that I knew, I felt like quite understood this. Like I would say things like, oh yeah, I talk to God all the time, and people would look at me like, wait, you talk to God? And I'm like, yeah, like is that strange to talk to God? I feel like everybody should be talking to God. I feel like everybody should have this deep, intimate connection. And so I kind of just felt odd because I felt like some people thought it was odd, and I kind of get now. So I mean, I can go way more in depth in all of these things. I'm just kind of giving you an overview because it's so much. So I developed my relationship with Jesus and with Christ pretty deeply in high school. But again, not in a really religious, churchy way, more in a relationship, mystical way. So it's really kind of hard when I talk to people because I don't really feel like a very religious person, but I do feel like a very spiritual person, and I'm very much, my spiritual connection is with Jesus and is with God. So after I graduated high school, I was like, I want to do something like profound. I want to help people. And so I was like, what ministry schools could I look at to actually like go overseas and spend time in other countries. And but what's a ministry school that's open and that's free? Because again, I didn't consider myself super religious, so I ended up going to a school called Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry, which maybe you've heard of and maybe you haven't, but it's a very spiritual Christian ministry school. They believe in supernatural healing. They believe in giving people prophetic words. They believe in healings and signs and wonders and all of these things. So I was like, okay, like I feel like these people I might be able to relate to with and grow in my spirituality in a way that I hadn't before. So I ended up attending ministry school there. It was a really, really great experience for the most part. And I ended up going, traveling a little bit and just growing more in my spiritual sensitivity. And I started to actually have, during that time, a lot more angelic encounters, which is another whole topic in itself. Became more sensitive, was getting a lot more words, was just and behind all of this, it's less about the spiritual pursuit, but in my opinion, it's more about growing in love. The foundation to me of all spirituality should be love. Like, it shouldn't be about ego, it shouldn't be about pride, it should be about deepening our love for people, for humanity, for even becoming more connected to our planet, to our cosmos, to God. At the core of it, if it's not love, if you're not growing in love, all that other like spiritual encounters, supernatural encounters, honestly don't really matter. So anyways, and to this day, even after graduating from ministry school, I was literally 20 at that time, so I am now 30. I've just continued to grow deeper with God in my spiritual journey and have continued to have more encounters, and a lot of the boxes of things that I used to believe have totally been broken, and I'm just kind of on this journey of exploring and growing deeper with God and my connection. I think my heart really is for other people to have that raw, authentic connection to God and to spirituality, because I think it's really important and fundamental even for our emotional health, our physical health. Being connected to something that's higher than you, I think, just provides a lot of peace and a lot of joy. And even with our world right now, there are so many things that are not in our control. So for me, having that connection to God has been just vitally important. So I honestly just would love to share more topics on this on my channel. I hope you found this video interesting, or you can connect in any way. I would love to hear your spiritual journey down below. Again, I just want to say that I want this place to be a safe place for everybody to share. All belief systems are welcome. I'm not trying to force my belief system on you. I just wanted to share, and I wanted to talk about more sort of metaphysical and mystical experiences on this channel. So yeah, I think I'm gonna leave it at that today. This video is pretty long. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening to me, and let me know what other spiritual kind of mystical topics maybe you'd like me to discuss in the comments, and I'd be happy to talk about those things and to share my experience if I have experience with it. And yeah, so that is all, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.